It's been a while since I have last done one of these classic match recap in MLS history. So today I'm going to do another one of these as I'm going to be looking back at the first ever MLS All Star game that took place at Giant Stadium in 1996. And it was between MLS East versus MLS West. And remember, this was back when the All Star game was still in an East versus West format, and it will only take us a couple of years before we actually have the format what we know today, where an entire MLS All Star team would be playing against a foreign team. Mostly, these foreign teams are from the big team that is coming from the European League. Now, in terms of this All-Star game, and when I look at the starting 11, I don't know about you, but I thought the East definitely have some more well-known names, and I thought they were going to have a bigger advantage in this game compared to the West, because as you can see in the East, there are a lot of notable names that you probably have heard of. We got Tony Miller as the goalkeeper for the East in the starting 11. Then you got Martin Vasquez as defender, Jeff Argos as the defender, Clyde Coleman as the defender, Alexi Lawless as the defender, Roberto Donadoni as a midfielder, Carlos Valderrama, who eventually would win the Man of the Match award for this All-Star game playing midfield. Then you got the hometown favorite, Tat Ramos, playing in midfield, Roy Lassiter, who eventually would win the Golden Boot that year playing forward, Welton as a forward, and then Brian McBride going for the MLS East to round out the starting 11. Now, the substitute bench, even the substitute bench, they had some very notable players that you could argue that they probably should have started in the starting 11. In the substitute bench, the backup goalkeeper was Matt Doherty, who came on in the 45th minute. Same with Steve Pittman, who also came in the 45th minute playing defender. Then you got Marco Echeverri, who was the first substitute out for the East and the first substitute to come on in this All-Star game. And I was kind of surprised that Echeverri did not start this game, consider the fact that he would end up winning MVP this year and that he was probably one of, if not the best player from that season. But he came off as a sub in the 35th minute. Then we got Dr. Kumato, yes, that's actually his name, starting midfield and came on at the hour mark. Then we got Giovanni Savarese, another hometown favorite, coming into the game in the 42nd minute playing forward. And then round up with Steve Ramo, who was the last player to be subbed in this MLS All-Star game, coming in the 67th minute and playing forward. Now, in terms of the MLS West starting 11, you got the sweeper keeper Jorge Campos starting for goal for them. Then you got John Dorff as the defender, Robin Fraser also as a defender, and Dan Couchman rounds up the defender that is starting in the starting 11 for the MLS West. For the midfield, you got Preki, Mauricio Cienfuegos, Kobe Jones, Leonel Alvarez, and Jason Kreis to round up all the players that play midfield for the starting 11 for the MLS West. Going forward, you have two strikers going forward for MLS West, and that is Eric Wijnaldum and Eduardo Hurtado. Now, on the substitute bench, the West decided to do a very classic move that a lot of these kind of exhibition and friendly match, or even in these All-Star game would do, and that is, at halftime, we are going to pretty much bring everybody on the substitute bench and bring them into this game, and that is exactly the case in this, as everybody on the substitute bench for the West came in during halftime. We got Matt Dodd coming in as the goalkeeper in the 45th minute. Same with Diego Sonara, who was a defender. Paul Bravo, who was a midfielder. Mark Setel, who was a midfielder. Digito Tecavara, yes, that is actually his real name, going forward. And then Mo Johnston finish it off going for the MLS West, coming on at halftime as a substitute. Now, in terms of the game itself, a little bit background information. Like I said, this game took place at Giant Stadium in New York. It took place on July 14, 1996. And this game actually took place at Giant Stadium, and that they did not actually play on the artificial turf. So, despite the fact that they had the artificial turf, can't even say that name correctly, for most of the MetroStar game during the inaugural season, they elected to put a grass pitch on the field because, as I will mention a little bit later, this was the first game of a doubleheader where the following game will be a game between Brazil versus the World All Star to follow. And since I mentioned that, might as well just mention the last point I was going to mention, the background information. And because of the fact that, you don't want to have some of the most well-known players in MLS to play on an artificial turf, and that you especially don't want to have some of the most well-known player to play after this game on artificial turf. That's why I think they decided that they have to put some grass, and that they have to put some natural grass pitch on top of the artificial turf. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't have played this game at Giant Stadium. Now, the attendance was 78,416 fans, which to this day is still the largest attended game for an MLS All Star game. I know Atlanta fans are going to be mad of me saying that, but keep in mind, back when Atlanta United hosted that All Star game in 2018, that game was a record for the most attended game for an MLS All Star game, but that was only the stand alone. We're talking about overall in terms of both stand alone and doubleheader, and in this case, in terms of the doubleheader for an MLS All Star game, this was the most attended game out of all the MLS All Star game that we had. Now, this game, as I mentioned earlier, was part of the doubleheader between Brazil versus the World All Star to follow. And in terms of the first half in this game, Roy Laster had the first real chance that was saved by Campos. And I thought early on there was definitely some end-to-end action between both of these teams. And I thought, since this was an all-star game and since pretty much every single player on that was playing this game have never played against each other, I thought it was going to be a little bit disjointed, but that wasn't really the case, and there was definitely a rhythm to the game. And I know the announcer have mentioned that they were expected this game to be a little bit disjointed early on, but they were kind of surprised the fact that it wasn't disjointed and there was actually a rhythm to the game. And maybe that has to credit with the fact that there's just so much talented player on the pitch right now that maybe that's why the game is not as disjointed as we first thought it was going to be the case. Now, despite the fact that I did say that this game was a little bit end-to-end, I thought the East looked slightly the better team because I thought they had more of the real decent chances in this game, and eventually they were rewarded of a goal by that in the 14th minute as hometown hero Tab Ramos would score from a great assist from Valderrama, but even a better volley that Tab Ramos basically hit. I mean, there was some very good goal that was scored in this game. Like, not only this was a 5-goal thriller in the first ever MLS All Star game, but we have seen some goals that you could say are some of the best goals we have ever seen in an MLS All Star game. Now, just a minute later, it looked like the East could have doubled that lead when Welton missed an absolute sitter from 3 yards out, and McBride had a chance to make it 2-0 8 minutes later when he was denied by Campos. And the crowd, they were definitely enjoying this game, and I guess the reason why they were enjoying it is probably because they were very pro East. Like, when Tab Ramos scored that goal, the entire stadium just basically erupted. And I understand Tab Ramos obviously played for the Metro Star, and I'm pretty sure there was a lot of Metro Star fans in the crowd. They were definitely very happy when they see their own players score a goal in an all-star game. But it just felt like every time when the East scored, it feels like the crowd reaction was definitely much louder than when the West would have scored. But I also think that might be the case because since a lot of those fans were from the Metro Star, and since they play in the Eastern Conference, they want to cheer on the Eastern Conference and want to take the pride of the Eastern Conference and saying that is a better conference than the Western Conference is. Now, despite the fact that most of the time the crowd was erupting whenever the East were going to the attack, there was one moment that the crowd actually erupted in favor of the Western Conference, and that this was kind of, I'm not quite sure were they erupting or they were kind of shocked when they saw this, but Jorge Campos, as I said, he was a sweeper keeper, and they have mentioned it throughout the game. He does some very crazy stuff that you will never see goalkeeper usually do during that time. Like, I think the only goalkeeper I can think on top of my mind can do what Jorge Campos did was Neuer, of what he obviously when you see him play, he obviously do some crazy stuff of going upfield and trying to set up play. But Jorge Campos actually took this to the extreme. Like doing this play, he started from around his 18-yard box, and then he basically just marched down the field all the way to the East 18-yard box. And again, the crowd, they were definitely erupting when they saw this, but in some way they were shocked. The fact that that's a goalkeeper that is basically taking on everybody, and it's not every day you see a goalkeeper, even a sweeper keeper like Jorge Campos, would just completely take on the entire Eastern Conference defender and almost score a goal doing that. Like, imagine if Jorge Campos actually scored a goal doing that sequence. Boy, you talk about, that would be probably the most memorable goal we'll ever see in MLS All Star game history, with the fact that you definitely didn't think a goalkeeper it is very rare you see a goalkeeper that a goalkeeper would score, and usually when a goalkeeper does score, it came in the last minute. But I don't think a lot of people would even imagine the fact that a goalkeeper would score and it came in the 30th minute, and it would be a guy that just took on the entire defender and eventually slots it home into the back of the net. But unfortunately that wasn't meant to be, and that attack kind of broke down a little bit. But still, it was kind of surprised when I saw Jorge Campos just completely took on the entire defender like he was Lionel Messi in that sequence. Now, eventually the West did get the equalizer, and it came in the 33rd minute when Preki scores an absolute banger from 25 yards out, and it was Cifuentes with the assist. And this was kind of a free kick out of the training ground, with them just kind of taking short to give it to Preki, who absolutely fires this one from 25 yards out to tie the game at 1 apiece. Then 4 minutes later, it would be Jason Kreis would score the second goal for MLS West, as the West really kind of turned this game on its heads, because for majority of the first half, I thought the East were by far the better team. But the West, with 2 quick goals, just like that, they're up 2-1 in this game, and the momentum was clearly swinging toward the West side. As the East, near the end of the half, they were kind of a little bit shocked. The fact that, they were dominating for majority of the game, but all of a sudden, they find themselves 2-1 down as they head into halftime. Now, in the second half, I thought the West started well in the second half, but the East quickly regained their dominance, and they really started to regain their dominance after the hour mark, and pretty much started to put a shooting gallery in front of Matt Dahl's goal in this sequence. And it all started in the 63rd minute when Savarese probably had the best chance for the East to equalize in this sequence, when he was robbed by Dahl after going one-on-one with the goalkeeper. Then 3 minutes later, Welton, who of course missed a sitter earlier in this game, had a one-on-one opportunity, had a chance to redeem himself after that horror miss earlier. Couldn't quite do it, as he shoots his shot wide off the goal. But eventually the East would get that equalizer after all the pressure they were putting on the West, and it would be Savarese, another hometown hero, would tie the game up at 2 apiece in this game. And then just a minute later, Kamalo almost had a chance to give the East a 3-2 lead after Don made an incredible save to remain this game tied up at 2 apiece. Then 9 minutes later, Echeverry hits the post, and I thought, I thought when Echeverry came into this game, I thought he was going to kind of work his magic in this game, as he had done pretty much throughout that season with DC United, but he wasn't really involved that much of the game, and it was in many ways Carlos Valderrama, the guy that I thought he really run the show in this game. And as I mentioned, he eventually would get the man of the match, and well-deservedly getting the man of the match in this game. Now, in the 83rd minute, Savarese almost doubled his scoring chart, as he almost scored an absolute beauty of a bicycle kick that unfortunately went into the side netting. Before, as we were just about a minute and a half away from heading to a shootout, yes, after this game, if this game does remain tied at 2 apiece, as it is the case throughout the the entire season in MLS and really the early history of MLS. Whenever a game remains tied, we of course would go into a shootout, and it would be crazy to see that kind of thing in the first ever MLS All Star game, like to see some wacky kind a shootout happen. And I'm not quite sure if the fans would really like it, or the fact that they would think, what the heck is this? Because keep in mind, despite the fact there was 78,000 people attending this, I also saw a lot of Brazil jersey in that crowd. And the reason why there was a lot of Brazil jersey is because after this game, that's when the Brazilian national team was playing the World All Star. And I think this probably might be the first time they watch an MLS game, and they probably might be scratching their head and thinking, what in the world is this shootout? I mean, I have never seen that in my life before. So there would be definitely a lot of confusing look if MLS would have actually went to a shootout, if this All-Star game would have remained tied at 2 apiece. But just like the first ever MLS game that was saved from going to a shootout after it was tied 0-0 for so long, this game was the same case, where it was saved literally at the last minute from going to a shootout when Steve Pittman would score in the 88th minute. And this was a Tampa Bay Mutiny connection, because Valdemar and Pittman both are Tampa Bay Mutiny player, and they basically set up a beautiful 1-2 ball that Pittman eventually would go through on goal and score the winner of this game and give the East the 3-2 lead, and eventually the winner of this game. And as I mentioned, Carlos Valdemar would eventually win the man of the match of this game. And that is how the first ever MLS All-Star game would unfold. And I'll tell you what, it was definitely a very exciting first ever MLS All-Star game, and I definitely think that the fans definitely got their money's worth in terms of what happened in the first ever MLS All-Star game. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button. Let me know in the comments below if you actually watched or even attended this first ever MLS All-Star game at Giant Stadium, and what was your favorite memories watching this game. Obviously, I can't recall my favorite memory of this game, because since this game took place in 1996 and I wasn't born until 2 years later when this game took place, obviously I don't remember anything from what happened to this first ever MLS All-Star game until I just recently watched the replay of this entire game a couple of hours ago. But either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash that subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.